Let's fill it up.
So, welcome to the Everyday Heroes podcast. I'm Philip Brady, and I am joined by a friend, a dear friend, colleague, companion, all of those kind of things, Anca Iordache from Switzerland. And Anca is somebody who I look up to an awful lot and have done for years. Every Friday at 10:30 UK, we have a conversation we have done for, I think, roughly the last 3 or 4 years. But Anca, I think the reason I wanted to have you on is because the one liner about the Everyday Heroes podcast is there could be people beside you in the queue in Tesco or Sainsbury's or whatever the local supermarket is in Switzerland. And we don't realize how inspiring they are, or the stories that they've had and the adventures that they've been on or that they're going on. And so I wanted to try and tell some of those stories and give people the opportunity to hear them as well. So firstly, just thank you. I think the reason I wanted to have you on is just that I find you just amazing, deeper than deep, inspiring to be around. And I've learned so much from our conversations, and it always reminds me to be human. So just wanted to say thank you, number one, and hello, good morning.
Good morning. So glad to be here.
So what we normally do, Anca, is just have a quick kind of like summary of where you're at the moment. So what's going on for you in your life at the moment? What chapter you're playing in the moment?
Yes. So thank you for having me here and providing this space for yet another conversation. As you said, it's wonderful to meet every Friday. It's a Tuesday today, or it's a Wednesday? It's a Wednesday today.
Yeah.
But yes, I'm always looking forward for our Friday conversation. Where am I today? So I'll go back to who I am. So I'm Anca. I am Romanian by origin. I'm also Swiss. I've been living in Switzerland now for probably 20 years. I live in a small village called Dulier. I don't know if I shared this with you before. It's a small village outside Geneva. So I really live in the countryside. I am married and I have 2 boys. I'm also the godmother of another 10 children that are back in Romania, here in US, all over the world, really. And that's part of my life. And I love them dearly, and I have so much joy in meeting them and being with them on the phone, or in as I'm reading books to them on the phone, or things like this. I'm living in the countryside, and I'm passionate about nature, and I'm passionate about food, as you know, and I'm passionate about slowing down and continuing to cultivate attention and connection. I think these are 2 very important words in my life: attention and connection. I am also working. I'm working as a learning professional in a multinational bank. And I'm also doing a little bit of learning myself right now. I'm part of this 2 years program, which is called Timeless Wisdom Training, serving personal and collective growth and healing. So yes, I'm here.
Timeless Wisdom Training sounds deeper than deep. And
it is. I'm just in the beginning of my journey on that program, so I'm still making sense of that title. Yeah.
And that was one of the things, the kind of journeys or adventures you were kind of sharing, even just high level before we pressed record, was that kind of adventure that you're on that seems to have been a thread. Do you want to share what that adventure to you is?
Yes, and I was thinking about this question about the adventure. So I think I've been in on an adventure in my life to really figure out how people learn, and really over time I developed this understanding and this passion to understand more of how people learn from each other. I call it social learning, but I think it's much more than that. But it all started, I think, with my parents. My parents are were both professors, teachers. So I think in my childhood, I've been exposed and very curious to see how they engage with teaching their students. So that's been the first I think time that I got exposed to the concept of learning and teaching and learning from each other. And then early career, I was part of this NGO called ISEC. And ISEC's vision is peace and fulfillment of humankind potential. It's really beautiful, but it's really that's what ISEC does. I joined ISEC in my second university year, and I remember feeling very strongly at that time. So I was going through my formal education, and at the same time I was part of this organization, which was really like a working environment, but a really fun working environment. And I felt strongly that I should quit university and just dedicate myself to working in ISEC. But I didn't, of course, because I had to be a good student. So I continued my university, and I continued to pass the exams, though I was very little attending the classroom. And the classrooms in my university were very formal. There was a lot of content dump, and then I was going into this place where we were really looking at each other and learning from each other a lot. We were getting immersed into different kind of experiences. I remember, learning about accounting in one of the class in university, and just being so rejecting the idea of doing accounting. And then I was going to ISEC, and we had to, of course, look after the financials of the NGO, and it was so fun to do that with other people, and just asking each other, how do you go about this, and just observing the others doing it. So that was I think a really, really important experience in my life and in my career. That start of it was really interesting. Like, those of you that are listening and are familiar with ISEC would know what I talk about, because the energy and the humanity and the playfulness of that place offered the totally right conditions for a young person to learn about everything, to learn about how to run a business, to learn about how to engage with people from diverse cultures, to learn how to recruit and how to fire people, things that we do every day in the corporate life, but again in a very playful human way. And then I joined. I joined the place where I'm currently working, the bank. And I remember joining a team where I was responsible for training, again, formal training. And it was tough for the first years, because again, there was something that wasn't sitting with me about the way that we were doing learning. You know, a lot of content, a lot of information, very little human interaction. It was also the time when we were transitioning into virtual online training. So the people would just spend a lot of time in front of their computers and consume content, trying to make sense of it. So yeah, the journey continued as I started to get very curious about this whole space of social learning, and really how do you enable connections so that people can teach and learn from each other in the context of what they are doing, and in the context of life as well, because I think we teach each other so much more than the profession. We teach each other like how we do things and how we approach things and how we think. So yeah, that's the journey. That's the adventure that I'm following, the thread that I'm following in that sense. So let me stop here.
I didn't know a lot of what you've talked about
Mm,
you, even the
mm,
10 godchildren. I didn't know that. I didn't know that
mm,
they're around the world and that you're reading stories over the phone to them and that kind of thing. It's just so lovely. But again, it's
mm,
who you are. It's not what you do. So
mm.
I get it. And that adventure, you can see that it's been a thread since as long as I know you anyway, which is roughly 2014, 2015, I'd say. So with that as an adventure, did you set out with that? Like what was the call? And then like when that was nearly in front of you, were you like, that's a big question. So was there
Mm.
ever any like hesitation around, no, this is the adventure, this is the journey that I want to proceed with?
Um, there was always hesitation and questioning and doubt, and I think that comes to reinforce some of our beliefs, those questions, and staying with the questions of, is this the right path? Is this the right adventure? I think we should always love when those questions are coming in that sense. But yes, there was a lot of resistance, I think, in at the point where, so in my career, I took a stand in actually writing my job description. And I was very lucky because my manager gave me that opportunity. He saw that I'm very restless and that I come with all kinds of ideas. And one day he said, why don't you write your job description, what you want to do? And I remember naming myself social learning and collaboration.
Oh.
um, and then he said, well, you can be the head of social learning and collaboration. And the head, again, didn't sit well with me. I said, I can be the heart of social learning and collaboration, but not the head.
Oh.
But there was a lot of resistance from the system. I think back in 2010, maybe, formal learning was still very, very strong. And there wasn't really an understanding of what is that, what do you mean we should reduce content and bring more engagement and networking and conversations into the learning programs in that sense. Everything had to be scripted, everything had to be reviewed and approved, and yes, it was hard. I remember, coming at home and crying because it was really, really difficult to convince, and not to convince, to even get people to really pay attention to what I was trying to do, or how I was trying to change things. Plus, like I had no real education in the space of social media or social engagement, and that to me was somehow a limiting mindset of, that hesitation of, am I really right? Am I really in the right position to drive this type of work? Yeah.
We could stop right now, right? I need to go and do some thinking about what you've just said. It's wild. One of the things you wrote down about, I don't want to be the head of, I want to be the heart of, just literally hits me in my heart, because I wrote down just the sentence underneath, bring your heart to work. And if we move people from, because I'm big into moving people from their heads into their bodies and helping them, that's how you become more authentic. You don't think about authenticity, I think you feel it. So that's a physical thing. It's not a cognitive or mental or intellectual thing. So I love that. Like, it's like an elevator going down deeper into the body. Below the neck is where the magic can happen. But with any of that heart stuff, it also comes with the equal, like, heart is where you suffer, but also where you live. So it sounds like that kind of journey was a balance of the two. The suffering on one side, you could say, because it's difficult in that environment where we've done it this way, so it's always the way, versus what we feel or know and embody as a different thing in contrast to that. So how do you navigate that? How do you get through that? Or who helped you make sense of that so that you didn't defeat yourself and say there's something wrong with me, that you were able to kind of keep going and say, no, like, this is right?
Yeah, I can so who helped me? I would say, first of all, my husband, Theo. I was saying that I was coming home every day from work, and it was, he also worked in the learning and organizational development space. So he was really getting me, and he was getting the challenge. He was working in a very different environment. He was still in the NGO space, but we had very similar challenges in that sense. And he really encouraged me to go back every day and just try something different, or approach it in a different way, but always like stay true. So he was really like the solid encouragement of, and giving me a lot of confidence of, yes, you should trust your intuition, and you should trust your intelligence, both the intelligence of the head, but also like the intelligence of the heart in that sense. And then there were many other mentors or coaches that along the way, they just somehow appeared in my life. And this is really interesting, because probably in that moment when they appeared, I had no idea that they would have any strong significance in that sense. And you never know. But I guess, just receiving it with in an open and curious way, and see where it takes you is really important. So the first person that I can think of is a lady called Jane Hart. She was doing at that time something really innovative in the space of learning technologies, and she was actually part of an association called Internet Time Alliance. And so it was her together with Charles Jennings, that we both know, that we've done really interesting work later on, and then with Harold Jarshi, and then with Jay Cross, an incredible professional who passed away a few years ago, who said, conversations is the best learning technology ever invented. So Jay Cross said that. But Jane Hart, she really we had a few conversations, and she really challenged even further my intuition that learning happens in a social way. And she introduced me to a set of technologies in which you can make this happen at scale, which was exactly what I needed at that point. I needed a way not just to bring people together to engage in conversation, but actually to do this at scale. And then I have to mention, of course, my manager at that point, who was incredible in thinking what kind of support to give me and to build around me, like what kind of other skills and other team members are needed for us to create a kind of a movement around this. So Brian Murphy, he at that point he hired actually a marketeer, Debbie, that you know as well, and Debbie came with again a complete different background from a learning professional. She wasn't doing learning at all. She was doing marketing and communication. And I remember how difficult it was to work with her in the beginning. I remember again, like coming back home and really struggling to make it work. Again, a very, very different person from in terms of working style from myself, and exactly what I needed. And again, that's what we need sometimes. We need people that are very different from our profiles. And I have to mention our good old friend Daryl King, who at that point was working with us in the space of organizational development. And Daryl always inspired me with his presence, and again, the whole space of human relationship intelligence, and his courage to actually bring forward. He would come in a group, and he would start a meeting by putting us all into a circle. I can't forget, those moments. We would come together in a circle versus, on behind tables or whatever, like in a theater style in that sense. So we would come in a circle and we would check in with each other. And I remember feeling very uncomfortable looking around and feeling fascinated about his presence and his courage to just stay with it, because he knew how important that was to start the conversation and to start the work. So yeah, a lot of inspiration from Daryl. And I could go on and on. But here are some of my, there are some of my mentors and my support.
Yeah. I'm doing a talk in June, and there'll be about 250 personal trainers, fitness professionals, some really cool speakers. And I'm going to talk about butterflies. But there's a cool story about butterflies, which is this pair of people notice a butterfly in a cocoon struggling to get out. And one person says to the other, like, I'm going to go and help. And the other person says to them, no, allow the butterfly to struggle, because that's actually what forms the strength in the wings to be able to fly.
Mm-hmm.
So when you say that you were struggling to make both like the relationships and the work fit the work, that's also what makes it so potent or powerful as well.
Mm.
And the other thing that came to mind was something I only heard last week, which was a new day begins in the middle of the night.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I had never
Mm.
thought about that, but it's so obvious when you say it, but it's true.
Yes. Yes. Mm.
So if we talk about those kind of challenges, it's kind of you fitting or not fitting into what the mode was, and then with people and those different personalities and how you take that and then do brilliant with it. Is that probably a good summary, or were there other kind of challenges as well along that path?
Yeah, definitely. I think the big challenge is indeed the system. But it's what is really interesting is that this is something that we have invented, and we sometimes take too seriously. Yeah. The other challenge is the speed. We're just speeding. We're just running. You know this, but I just came back a few weeks ago from this wonderful place called Plum Village in France, which is a community founded by Thich Nhat Hanh, a Vietnamese, a Buddhist monk. And in Plum Village, there's this big writing on the wall that says, "Stop running, you look silly." And it's fascinating because everybody arrives in Plum Village and we walk really fast and we really run, because this is how we go through our lives. We're just running, and then suddenly we slow down, and the magic happens. So yeah, the speed is a big challenge, because again, you know, coming back to those two important words to me, attention and connection, you can't give attention and you can't connect when you're running. Yeah.
Stop running, you look silly. And it's also funny because that's a like paradoxical contrast to the slowness that we also move with in organizations when we get to a certain point. So it's interesting that there's speed daily, you could say, but over a longer term, the changes or the orientation steers slowly.
Yes, yes. Yeah, and you almost need to exercise your patience in that sense. Have patience that things will change, and it's incredible. I was sharing with someone the other day that it's probably been, well, 10 years to really see the concepts that we've introduced at that point in the organization about learning from each other, learning through connections, showing up into the language of our leaders right now. So yeah, it really took 10 years for this to sink in that sense, and consistent reminders and consistent practice. Um, yeah, but yeah, the the big challenge, I think, is getting too serious about and too somehow losing the courage and losing the faith that things can be different. And it's incredible if you think of the pandemic right now, of the last 2 years. Um, what happened in the last 2 years probably needed about 10 or more to actually shift an understanding of how work happens and how life happens, right? And it just completely shifted the pace of us working and living in different ways. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not a what is it? Not it's not a great resignation. It's a great redirection. Is one of the frames I've heard about it. But the thing that you say about losing courage, cœur is the French word for heart, which is where the word courage comes from. So it's interesting again that move from mind to body,
Yeah.
is where we're detaching ourselves from. Again, if we don't learn the lessons of the last 2 years, let's say, and forever, when we distance ourselves from that, we distance ourselves from probably the possibilities that things can be different.
I remember being in a session, in a conversation, in a learning experience, and the facilitator would show a pen with a cap.
Yeah.
And every break she would say, don't forget to take the rest of the pen with you. Like, don't just go with your head, go with your whole body. I would always remember that, because it's so easy, and sometimes I have this moments at work where I just look around and I'm just seeing heads. And yes, don't forget you have a body. Just take that with you. Yeah, and just pay attention to it. Because as you say, and I've learned this a lot from you, Philip, in our conversations, in our explorations, that just paying attention to what's happening in your body when you're having a conversation, when you are reading something, when you are just moving through life and work, the body can just tell you so much about the direction that you need to take, or what is it that is not sitting well with you, or where does excitement comes into your body in that sense. So in the program that I'm actually doing right now, the Timeless Wisdom Training, there's this concept of 3 sync, really paying attention to what's happening in your head, the thoughts that are in your head, paying attention at the emotions. So, what comes up, what do you feel? And then paying attention to the sensation in your body. Paying attention to what you feel and maybe what you don't feel. Because sometimes a part of your body can feel completely numb, and that's good information as well. And just trying to put these three pieces together, and that's really, really powerful. And it takes just a few seconds, maybe a minute, to just do that three sync. And if we would do that, again, the quality, I guess, of our decisions, of what we bring forward, would completely shift, rather than just bringing the thinking around a problem or an issue.
It's why I pay so much attention to that kind of iceberg model with the physiology, the emotions, the feeling, the thinking, the behaviors, the results, because we only ever pay attention. And in training, actually, a lot of the stuff we pay attention to above the line behaviors, hold your hands like this if we're communicating, or do these kind of things, and the results that we aim to get to, but we forget the thinking, the feelings, the emotions, the physiology that underpins all of that stuff. And I think it's just so important, and we lose that signal or information from it. One of the things that I'm paying attention to, Anca, at the moment is how coffee is affecting my ability to notice those things. And I haven't yet been able to detach myself from my morning coffee, but it's on my mind probably a lot of the time to think about it and try it.
Yeah, it's incredible. I'm with tea, so I'll push you into shifting.
And when you're in those times of testing, what are you paying attention to that's pulling you through? What is it on the horizon, or that you hold in your mind, or you remind yourself of, or that just kind of helps you move that one step up? You've said like your husband, and you've said these kind of mentors along the way, but is there something else that you kind of focus on or remind yourself of or pay attention to?
There are probably, and I'm going to bring again a lot of sources of inspiration here. I've done, again, early in my career, I've done a coaching program, a coaching certification with this lady called Nancy Klein. Hugely inspirational. The program is called Time to Think. And it's the whole idea that so she thinks that the attention of one human being to another is an act of creation. Only the fact that you are paying attention to me right now generates the answers and the intelligence that I need for myself in this moment. And that's really, really powerful, because, and it's really interesting, in this space of learning from each other. So, I'm here with you, and we can teach each other what we know in that sense, and what we're good at, and so on. And at the same time, simply by the fact of being here and offering attention and presence to you, that unlocks a lot of things that you need. I don't need to do anything but just pay attention to you. I don't need to teach you anything. I don't need to ask you or give you anything. You have all that you need. It's just that you need the space to really bring that up. And that's fascinating, because we're doing that less and less. If you think about, how much attention do we give to our friends, to our children, to our, again, we come back to that running and rushing through life, and doing so many things, that we almost need to stop doing and just being with one another. So that's something that that has been always an inspiration. And from time to time, I just remind myself of the teachings that I had with Nancy. Another source that comes to mind is this, and you probably know this, soul biographies from Nick Askew. Nick is a filmmaker. I'm not sure how to really name his work, but he is simply interviewing people. But it's a very special type of interviewing. Like he really captures, coming back to the beginning of our conversation, he really captures the human behind the body or the face or whatever. It really captures the human beauty and the human trauma and the human joy. So Nick has a site that's called Soul Biographies. And I remember a period in my life that I kept looking at those soul biographies. Daryl actually introduced me to that. And it was really the moment where I realized that every individual, every person that we encounter in our work life, in our personal life, they have a story, and they have a true self that they're very scared in actually showing, because again, we have invented specific rituals and systems and ways of being with one another, and we don't allow each other showing up fully in that sense. It's not safe, it's not appropriate, it's not whatever. And again, I keep reminding myself of that. And I guess my desire is to unlock as many of those real humans around me, again, in the community, in the work that I do, in even with friends. Sometimes, I'm just puzzled. Even with myself, I'm sometimes puzzled, like, why do I show up in this way in this conversation? So yes, that's the vision that keeps me going. Hmm.
There was something I was going to say there and it just left my mind. But one of the things that I was speaking to one of my, I would call him a mentor. I'm just so lucky to have him as a connection. He's was a global kind of CEO of a massive company, and he now helps small medium enterprises, so SMEs, scale with purpose. And he's a Wim Hof instructor. He takes people into ice baths and hiking in the mountains and all this kind of stuff. Just so inspiring. And one of the questions he left me with, and again, it's interesting that it's coming up again. What makes your heart sing? Right?
Beautiful question.
It's such a question. And I think people, one of the things that I wrote down earlier on is we rush to find the answers. And I think it's I can never think of the full name. It's Rilke. Like,
Yes.
hold the questions. Like, don't try and rush the answers. We rush the answers. We get the first thing and then we move on, and it's not the right thing. When actually the thing is to hold the question. And then Daryl in that kind of circle, holding the space, but also that kind of question of who are we collectively and individually? Who am I in this collective? But I know what it was now that I was going to say back to you was when you say about Nancy Klein, framing a conversation between people based on the quality of the attention. The way I thought about that was in conversation. So let's say you and me through Zoom or one-to-one in a coffee shop or whatever it is, there's a greater distance there for possibilities to happen than what's between our ears, which is so narrow, right? So literally physical distance is greater. So there's more space to explore versus what we know on our own. That was the kind of picture or way of making sense of what you said and why it's so powerful. Because literally there is more space to play. There's more space to explore, more possibilities can fit into that greater space between you and another person.
So true. So true. We have to read this this poem right now, Philip. I had to look for it because I really like it. Love the questions and leave the questions, I think it's called. Should I go ahead and read it?
Read away. This is your conversation.
Be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart and try to love the questions themselves, like locked rooms and like books that are now written in a very foreign tongue. Do not seek the answers which cannot be given you because you would not be able to leave them. And the point is to leave everything. Leave the questions now. Perhaps you will then gradually, without noticing it, leave along some distant day into the answer. Really beautiful. Yeah.
It's powerful. And I remind myself of that often because in coaching conversations, I think sometimes people look for answers.
Yeah.
And I don't give people homework. I give them growth work between conversations. And I say, here's the question. So an example of it yesterday was how can you show up more yourself in conversations? Who is that person that you want to be able to describe and become? That's the question. What are some of the lessons that this adventure and journey and the challenges have taught you as you look back?
Stay curious, stay nimble. Have patience. Yeah. And have compassion. Sometimes things are not yet ready, and you just need to have patience in that sense, and continue to nudge in a very gentle way towards what you think it's possible. And then when everything aligns, when all the conditions are there, it's going to happen. So I guess, again, just trust that it will happen. And take things lightly. I think early in my journey and in my career, I would take things personally. And I would get very upset, sometimes angry, of why this is not happening the way that I want. And it's all, it all is information, and all is useful progress somehow. So, I'm practicing a lot this detachment to, ideas and to things. And then you can be like, in a better state in that sense to do the work.
Yeah. And attachment is to the results, but it's also probably to the identity that you hold.
Correct. Yes. And to the ideas that you hold, indeed. Hold them lightly. I think that's the lesson. That's the question. And just stay curious. Because even if your intuition goes in one direction, and you know that maybe this is the way, there is always something that can learn or just enhance your understanding in that sense.
There's maybe two questions I could ask you. One will gestalt us closed quicker. So maybe let me be slightly selfish and say, what qualities do you think people demonstrate that make them heroes to other people?
What qualities? Curiosity is the first one. Compassion and empathy is the second one. And courage. Yeah. Curiosity, compassion, and courage are probably like the three, in my mind, most important qualities. And then just 3 C's, yes. And then just coming back to what we are saying about, paying attention to your body, and living with your heart as much as you live with your head and mind.
Was there any questions that I should have asked you that I didn't?
There are so many questions. Oh, it's hard to choose a question right now. I may ask you a question, Philip. And I'll again, I'm curious to hear of your answer on the qualities that you think make people heroes.
When you think of a hero in a film, they wear capes. I think a quality of a hero is being able to take the cape off and put it around somebody else. So to become that type of person. So I've always wanted like a Ferrari and all of these fancy cars. And I said to somebody recently, I'd love to be the type of person that could have a Ferrari, but could also give it away if somebody like wanted it more. Right? So I'm not there yet. But I think that that's a quality, as in the cape is who you become respected for and looked up to for and all that kind of stuff, but that you're willing to bend that around somebody else and say, I'm not attached to it. I'm not held to that. I'm willing to stand on my own without all of that. Vulnerable, without a cape, My mom, when I was in my teenage years, said to me, if who you are is what you have and what you have is lost, then who are you? That's the thing. If you're not the title, if you're not the head of something, if you're not the managing director or CEO or whatever it is of something, who are you when you go home in the evening and you're walking in nature beside somebody else who's a farmer or who's a insert anything else? I really care about that person, you know, because it's not a front. I think that that's one quality. So being able to put the cape around somebody else. Courage. If you think about a hero, they have an open heart, open chest to the world. They're not closed in. They're not shying away from. They're facing the fear and the adventure head on and open to it. But they I also think it's like the humility of it. There's a humility to the confidence. So I think that that's really important. The humility to be literally human and at a playing field level to everyone. And one of my values assessments that I had done with Complete, one of the debriefs with, I think it's Kate or Katie, she said to me, when you navigate different value systems, the work is not to move from one to the other, it's to transcend it, but also include. And I had always focused on just transcending and forgetting the include part. And that's really powerful. And I think heroes transcend so they're able to see new possibilities and rise above and offer that set of possibilities to people and an inspiring future, but they're also able to include who and what it is that we currently are at and bring that or inspire it forward rather than bring. And I've never articulated any of that, but I'm glad that you asked.
Thank you. Thank you.
So thank you. I appreciate, number one, your time, but number two, your heart and your ability to take us on a journey that is inspiring and motivating and curiosity inducing, and that you just show up all the time as yourself. I really appreciate that about you, and I've appreciated who I've become because of spending time with you. So thank you for being on the Everyday Heroes podcast, Anca. It's a joy and a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. I really enjoyed the conversation.